So this is a small presentation about the Vitalistic Healing program that's going to begin in January of 2014. Let me do another thing here to keep this on me. Hold on a second. Okay, so you should be able to see me, and you should be able to see the slide that says, "Welcome to our gathering of healers." So, let me start the slideshow. So I want to welcome you all to this introduction to Vitalistic Healing. Vitalistic healing is something that has very, very ancient roots. We have a section in the course when it was taught earlier that went through the history of it, and we trace it all the way back to shamanism, actually. So the first thing I want to do after welcoming you is to give you an idea, what does that actually mean, vitalistic healing? So first I'd like to define the word vitalism. Vitalism refers to the energy or the vitality of the body. And so healing systems that are in the category of vitalism are those that have a belief that there's an energy that animates the body and actually all things, including plants, including animals, and even mountains and rivers and streams and planets and stars. There's an energy to all of these things. So another principle related to this is that when there's an untunement or disharmony in this energy, this is what dis-ease is, what illness is. So we can restore balance to the energetic system, and that is what we want to do. So in different systems, of course, in homeopathy, we call this energy the vital force. The yogic tradition, it's called prana. In the Chinese tradition, it's called qi. So they're all pretty much talking about the same thing. We're talking about the body is an energy system, the universe is an energy system, the planets, the stars, the oceans, everything has an energetic quality to it. Now, so some people that may seem a no-brainer, but if you think about traditional allopathic medicine in our country, it's based on a mechanistic view, which is that the body is like a machine, and you need to, you know, put in a little bit of this chemical and take out some of that, and it's a much more mechanistic and materialistic view. But the vitalistic view is the energetic view. And some more known systems of energy medicine in our country are, for example, acupuncture, of course, homeopathy, Reiki. Some, you know, herbalism can be that way as well, but herbalism can be used in many different ways, not always having to do with the energetic system. Herbs can be used suppressively as well. So that's an idea, just a sort of basic definition of vitalism. What does healing mean? Well, you can look it up in the dictionary, and I think the best definition that I saw when I looked at a bunch of different definitions of what it means to heal was to restore a person to, it actually used the word spiritual wholeness. So there's an idea that we have an innate perfection that is sort of our original state, and the idea of healing is to restore that perfection, that we are able to come back to a place of purity and perfection with that energetic quality that has a balance. And in this state of perfection, we don't really separate out and say, oh, this is mental stuff, and this is emotional stuff, and this is physical stuff. It's an idea of this energetic whole where the mind, body, and spirit have an integration together. So you may wonder when you see how I put together this course, why I'm referencing some Eastern and some Western traditions. And probably the honest answer to that is I'm not exactly sure. What I teach is what I know works and what works together well. But the other thing is a lot of suppression happened in the West to the mystic kinds of arts, or to people who are doing these more energetic or vitalistic types of healing and spirituality as well. The history in the West is full of people being burned at the stake and murdered and all kinds of things for being astrologers and for being alchemists. And so there's been so much suppression and bad stuff that has happened in the Western mystery tradition, whereas many of these kinds of arts have been preserved beautifully in the East. One example of this is astrology. Of course, astrologers were considered witches and were often persecuted for hundreds of years by the dominant religion. And so its most recent rebirth 100 years ago came at about the time that psychology was being born, the time of Freud and Jung. And so astrology in the West is the way it kind of came back was as a sort of psychological thing, whereas in Asia and in the East, astrology has been used for thousands of years for figuring out who you should marry, what kind of business to start, when to start the business. Every village has its own, local astrologer, and the astrologer was usually the doctor, because as we'll see, astrology and medicine are very closely intertwined sciences and always have been in a traditional way. And it was never suppressed. It's always been like a mainstream thing that people did, was to go to astrologers and have things looked at from the cosmic point of view to see if it's a good idea or not a good idea. Match the charts before the people get married, and every major decision. I mean, rulers would decide when to go to war or if to go to war based on astrology. So that's why a lot of these sort of arts, occult arts you might call them, or from the Western mystery tradition, have really lost a lot of information and a lot of practitioners, whereas in Asia these things have just been developing more and more over thousands of years. So this is one reason, you'll see that I'm using, for example, Vedic astrology rather than tropical astrology. The other thing is Vedic astrology is based on where the planets actually are now, whereas tropical astrology is based on where they were 2,000 years ago. So Vedic astrology is much more accurate. And Vedic astrology also has a whole section of lunar astrology, which is the more ancient form of astrology, and that was lost in medieval times in the West. There was originally a lunar astrology as well, but it got lost due to all of these political things that happened. So if anybody has any questions, you can ask them now. I just sort of rattled off a whole bunch of information. And as I said, if you have a question, what you can do is go to the top of your screen, put your cursor at the top of your screen, and there'll be this floating bar that comes down that allows you to unmute yourself. So just keep that in mind. So we are all human beings, whether it's East or West, and so to my mind, all of these really incredible treasures of wisdom, of healing arts, of techniques for making medicines are really our right as human beings to learn from. And so, separating and saying, oh, well, that's from Asia, I only do Western stuff. So my background is really very mixed. As you may have seen if you've looked at my bio, I lived in Indonesia for 8 years, and I studied martial arts there. So I'm definitely sort of an East-West person by nature from very early on. So the one thing that I would say, if you are thinking about taking this course, is that you can be any spiritual or religious, have any kind of spiritual or religious beliefs or background. That doesn't matter at all. There's one thing that probably you're not going to be comfortable with unless you share this belief, which is a belief in the understanding of the law of karma, cause and effect. Because from the perspective of vitalistic healing that we're going to be going into here, the roots of disease, of disharmony in our vital force, in our energy body, has to do with obscurations, has to do with, you know, things that take this beautiful, pure energy field and kind of create blocks and things like that. And that is due to karma. And so the way, what we're going to do in just a minute is talk a little bit about how, you know, energetic methods bring about healing of that. So this is an alchemical, a lot of the images that I have here are alchemical images. So what our goal is as a vitalistic healer for ourselves, first of all, is to purify these kinds of obscurations and pierce through our own delusions so that we have clear vision. And in homeopathic terms, Hahnemann referred to this as the unprejudiced observer, to be able to really see things as they are without having a bunch of confusion, without having a bunch of emotional reactions. And those of us, you know, who've been involved in homeopathy, there are quite a few homeopaths and some of my homeopathic students on presentation tonight, know how hard it can be when you're faced with a client who's had a lot of abuse or who pushes your buttons because of their personality or whatever, and to have this kind of clarity and to have this kind of balance and clarity inside yourself is really one of the purposes of this course, because so many healing systems, they'll teach you how to do the actual thing, but what this is about is the state that to be in, to be a healer, in addition to, you know, some techniques as well for healing others. But that state of clarity, that state of balance, that freedom from obscurations are so crucial and so important to be a healer, to take a good homeopathic case, and to be any kind of healer, to be present in the moment. I can remember one time I had a massage from somebody. I mean, there are a lot of really great body workers in Santa Cruz, so I've had a lot of really great massages too. But I remember one time going to a spa, and I could just tell that the woman who was massaging me, her mind was somewhere else. I don't know what was going on with her, but she did not have this clarity, and it was really difficult, you know, to receive a massage from her. So this is why, you know, focusing on ourselves and having this clarity and breaking through the veil of our own delusions is so crucial. So in the West, vitalistic healing and the Hermetic arts, which are astrology, alchemy, and liturgy, are the three Hermetic arts. Liturgy meaning doing ceremony or ritual, is based on something called the Emerald Tablet, which was written by Hermes Trismegistus. The thrice great Hermes is what which is what Trismegistus means. So you can see from his staff there, we'll be looking at this image again, with the red snake and the white snake coiled on the staff. I'm going to see if I can move my picture so you can see his staff a little better. There, you can see that better. So this, you know, of course, this image has been taken over by the American Medical Association, but it actually is a very, very profound image, which we'll be looking at a little later as well. But you can see the two snakes coiling up, and these are the two energy channels that are going up the spine, which is what the staff is. So it's actually exactly, I mean, where the snakes cross are the chakras. So it's exactly the same as the yogic system, actually. So alchemy and yoga, especially if, you know, Kundalini type yoga, are really talking about the same thing. So what the Emerald Tablet said, we'll go into it in more detail in the actual course, but the famous part of it, which you may have heard before, is it is true, it is sure, it is the full truth, as above, so below, as below, so above. The wonders of the one are enacted. And so what this has to do is with the correspondences that everything in our body has a correspondence to different plants, to different planets, to different elements. There are all these things that correspond with each other. So, for example, the sun relates to our head and our intelligence and the heat in our body, and the moon relates to our consciousness, just things like that. And then there are herbs also. There are herbs that have that same kind of energy. So these correspondences between things in nature, inside our body, out in the cosmos, is really the tools that a vitalistic healer uses. In homeopathy, we use them in terms of similars, in terms of strengthening the energies, but there are also ways of doing it in balancing. So Richard Grossinger, who is a medical anthropologist, mentioned that homeopathy is the most successful branch of Hermeticism. And the Hermetic arts, as I mentioned, are really the Western mystery tradition. And the healing part of that is the plant alchemy, which we'll be talking about in more detail very soon. Any questions?
Well, I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, great. So on this page, you mentioned 3 areas, and one was ceremony. And what were the other 2?
The other 2 were alchemy and astrology. So the three arts, the 3 Hermetic arts, are astrology, alchemy, and liturgy. Liturgy is ceremony.
Great.
And we have all 3 in our program. Although most of the ceremonies that I'm doing are from the Buddhist tradition, because they're very powerful.
Great, thanks. That was my question.
You're welcome. Okay. The slide is not, why is the slide not moving? Okay, so now I'm getting a little bit into alchemy. Paracelsus, who lived from 1493 through, let me look at the rest of the dates, over his head, 1541, was the founder of what's called spagyrics, which is plant alchemy. And so he developed a theory called the law of signatures. I'm going to go through this kind of quickly now, but in the course, you know, we'll spend more detailed time on it. So the law of signatures is exactly what I was talking about on the previous slide, that there's, if you understand the energetic qualities of medicine and you understand the energetic qualities of the body and the disease, you can see the resonance between them. He also believed that a great sympathy exists between the planets and the stars and the organs of the human body. And in fact, there's a famous herbal called Culpepper's Herbal. You can still get copies of it. I have one, where it gives the planetary indications for different herbs. You'll see when we get to the herbal section, for example, rose. I make an elixir of rose. Now that's a pretty obvious one. Any guesses as to what planet is associated with rose?
Venus.
Yes, Venus. It's
Venus?
Venus, yes, exactly. So a certain plant possessing certain powers may induce certain similar vital powers to become active in certain organs if the plant and organ are related to the same star. So he was using the law of similars to strengthen different parts of the body by using a plant that had the same planetary association. He talked about that it was all due to the life force, that all diseases come from an invisible origin, meaning the vital force, basically. A physician should be a servant of nature, not her enemy. He should be able to direct and guide her in her struggle for life and not throw fresh obstacles in the way of recovery. So again, you know, sometimes the things that some forms of medicine do actually weaken us even more. So his favorite remedy was Hypericum perfoliatum, which is actually used as an antidepressant these days, interestingly enough. So the word spagyric itself actually means separate and combine, and spagyric was the word that he coined for plant alchemy. So it means to separate and combine, and we will talk about what we are separating and combining in plant alchemy. Interesting. Doesn't want to advance. Oh, there we go. Whoops, and it went too far. Let's see if I can go back. There. Okay, so Paracelsus also said, as I had mentioned earlier, in many traditional forms of medicine, that the doctor was also the astrologer. And Paracelsus said, you must know astrology to be a doctor or a healer. And part of it is to be able to know and understand the qualities of plants in terms of what planet and energy they relate to, but also how to make the timings of the medicines, when to make the medicines. If you're making a medicine associated with the sun, you want to do it when the sun is strong in the astrological chart, for example. But also the reason that I teach a lot of detail of Vedic astrology in this course is I find it so invaluable for understanding how to deal with our karmas, the obscurations that we're born with and the karmas that we're born with. In Vedic astrology, the chart is considered to be a map of the karmas that you were born with in this particular lifetime. In the Vedic tradition, there are all different kinds of karma. It's just like the Eskimos with so many different kinds of snow. Vedic, they have lots of different kinds of karma, but there's a particular set of karmas that you are born to deal with in this life, and that's what the chart tells us about. And so that kind of information I have found to be some of the most valuable valuable for many people, including myself. It's really profound, and it's a way you can help people very quickly in a lot of ways when they're in tough situations by looking and seeing what's going on with their karmas. So Vedic astrology is not simple or easy, but it's really worth studying, which is why I include it in this course. So this is an idea of how the signs of the zodiac relate to the human body. And this is universal. This is the same in Vedic and in Western astrology. You can see, for example, Aries, the ram. I don't know if you can see my pointer. I guess you probably, whoops, I didn't want to do that yet. Aries, the ram, is connected with the head. Gemini, the twins, is connected usually with the chest over here. Leo, the lion, is connected with the horse. The heart. Taurus, the bull, is the throat. And so this is just giving you an idea of some of the correspondences that you work with as an astrologer. So for example, if somebody had some bad stuff happening in the sign of Aries or in their ascendant, they might have headaches or depending on what the planets were, etc. So this is how Vedic astrology can really be helpful in understanding what's going on with people, even on a physical medical level. And when I the first few years that I was studying Vedic astrology, I did a number of studies. I did a study of autoimmune disease, I did a study of cancer, and I did a study of people with severe mental illness such as schizophrenia and dissociative identity disorder, which used to be called multiple personality disorder. And I looked at a lot of charts of all three of those conditions, and was so that I could understand how these things worked in astrology. It was very, very interesting. And some of the information that I came up with in that study is included in this course. It's a little bit advanced, but especially the information that I compiled about how to look at a chart specifically for health matters. You'll be learning that. So another kind of course, does somebody have a question or something to say? I hear some sound.
Yes, this is Owen here.
Hi,
there might be some background noise here. I have a question just being in the West here. Not everyone has the same belief in the Eastern healing methods. How much does the patient's belief in the system impact their healing?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it's important to have a rapport with the client. It's not important that they necessarily understand everything about the system, but rapport is important from a vitalistic point of view, because there needs to be a karmic connection, which means a sense of goodwill on both sides. If that's not there, it's not a good situation. So I would put it that, you know, karmic connection and rapport is what counts, rather than belief or not belief. Although Westerners do tend to, you know, focus on do they believe in it or not. I mean, typically when people come to see me for homeopathy, you know, often a family member will drag in somebody else who doesn't believe in it, and I'll say, you know, you don't need to believe in it. And that actually lets people off the hook, knowing that they're not expected to believe in it. And it can still work easily, but the rapport is very important. Does that answer your question, Owen?
Yes, yeah, that's great.
Okay, yeah, good to hear your voice.
Yeah, thank you.
Now I'm talking about another set of correspondences, which are the different realms of existence. So on the left, we have an alchemical drawing of the different realms. And on the right, we have a yogic drawing of the nadis and the channels and the chakras. And there's a direct correspondence between the lower realms and the lower chakras and the higher realms and the higher chakras. And some of the practices that we're going to be doing are actually addressing purification of our own chakras, as we are also making offerings and doing purification for beings in all the different realms. So it's a very, very profound level of healing. It's not just talking about our own body or even the body of our individual clients or patients, but it's also talking about offering a healing to all the beings of all realms. This is the Wheel of Life from the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. So we've changed traditions here. And this particular drawing is found usually on the door of every temple. And you can see that there are these lower realms here. The 6 realms, according to this tradition, are the hell beings down here. Then it's the hungry ghosts. Then it's the animals. Then it's the humans. Then it's the asuras, who are the demigods or the jealous gods. And then there is the devas, or the ones that are sort of on the top of that whole wheel or cycle. And so, yeah, this is a very interesting diagram that we'll go into more detail. Inside, we have the 3 root delusions, which we will actually be talking about very soon as well. The moon up here symbolizing liberation, and the person, this kind of demon-looking guy in the back who's holding this whole thing, is Yama, who is the Lord of Death in both the Vedic tradition and the Buddhist tradition. So just kind of reminding us that in all these realms, there's a beginning, a middle, and an end, and we're all going to die. Which is also why the Bardo teachings are part of this program, so that we can help ourselves and help others to make that ultimate transition, which we all are going to make. So, as I was mentioning, there are practices that we'll be doing in this course where we can purify our minds, our energy channels, and all of the beings in all realms. This particular drawing is showing the mantra of Chenrezig, who is the Bodhisattva of compassion, and the mantra is Om Mani Padme Hum. In each of those syllables purifies a different realm, and it also purifies a different chakra. So it's a very holistic form of healing and purification. So here's another picture of Chenrezig, the Bodhisattva of compassion, and just kind of repeating what I had just said, the purification of our channels as we relieve the suffering of beings in all realms. And as we are doing this as well, we're developing ourselves as the Bodhisattva of compassion, and sending and developing our own ability to send compassion to all beings and be compassionate toward all beings. So having the heart of a healer is truly, truly important. And that's actually something, often we think of things like, you know, being warm or being compassionate as just some natural attribute that some people have or some people don't have. But actually, you can develop it. You can work on it. You can become more compassionate by setting that kind of intention and doing these kinds of practices. And that's really what the whole idea of the Bodhisattva of compassion practice is to become more compassionate. You don't have to believe anything. You don't have to, it's not a religious thing. It's about developing your own quality of compassion and offering that compassion to all beings. The other Tibetan practice that we'll be learning, and by the way, the last slide that I showed you was the Bodhisattva of compassion, plus the medicine Buddha that is on this slide, will be taught by Tuku Orgen Phuntsok Rinpoche, who is basically what you would call a PhD in Buddhism. He's a Kempo, so he's qualified to be basically a professor of Buddhism, but he's also a really, really wonderful person, speaks incredibly good English. There are actually two people on the call who, or at least one person, Owen, knows him, and there's Annette Erickson knows about him, I guess. I don't know, maybe you're the two who know about him at this point, but anyway, he's wonderful, wonderful teacher, and he has agreed to come and spend a day doing Bodhisattva of compassion, which is Chenrezig practice and teachings and transmissions, and a day of medicine Buddha practice, teachings, and transmissions. So I'm just telling you about it, but he's going to be the one who's actually teaching you about this. So medicine Buddha is a practice that all Tibetan doctors do, because this is the way that they develop their heart of healing and their sense of themselves as a doctor is about being medicine Buddha. And so both of these practices are based on sound, mantra, using the sound, using sacred sounds to generate energies inside oneself and develop this compassion in terms of Chenrezig and these healing abilities and healing qualities in terms of medicine Buddha. So it's very fortunate, I feel, to be able to access these kinds of traditions and develop these kinds of qualities inside ourselves for the benefit of others. Okay, so now I'm changing gears. Do you have questions about what I just talked about in terms of medicine Buddha and Chenrezig? Because we're now going to talk about spagyrics, which is the alchemical So if you have a question, you can move your cursor up to the top, and you'll be able to unmute yourself. Okay, we'll move on. So spagyrics, as I mentioned, is plant alchemy. You can see a nice drawing here of some people doing plant alchemy back in the day. So it's really about vitalizing the plant to make it into a very potent and powerful medicine. Here are some of the vessels that were used. You'll see when we get to one of the slides that I have a vessel that's kind of similar to this. But this was sort of the high-tech stuff back then. This is a really kind of cool drawing of an alchemist's laboratory, or a replica. You can see, I don't know why there's an alligator hanging from the ceiling, but you can see, kind of imagine what it would have been like to have been in a kitchen like this and mixing up different things. Yeah, alchemists were scientists and people who were curious and people who like to mess with stuff. Like, you know, those of us these days who are in our kitchens making kombucha or whatever, you know, just kind of experimenting. So I'm going to go into a little bit of the theory of alchemy at this point. And a lot of the Hermetic sciences is all about the numbers because it's about the correspondences. So the number 2 is important in alchemy. It represents kind of what you would call the yin and the yang, the sun and the moon, the fixed and the volatile, solva and coagula, which is to separate and bring back together, which is what the word spagyric means, the soul and the spirit. And in terms of substances, we'll be talking in a minute about sulfur and mercury. Now, sulfur and mercury are used in metal alchemy, but there are equivalents in the plant world. So this is a little bit more about sulfur and mercury. Sulfur is the fiery, yang quality. Mercury is the moon-like silver quality. Sulfur is gold. Mercury is silver. So these are, I'm not going to go through all of these different correspondences right now, but we use mercury in alchemy as a solvent. It kind of dissolves everything and is corrosive. And the sulfur is something that's very unitive and together. So this is the really important slide in terms of understanding the 3 primal principles. We've now graduated from 2 to 3. So the 3 primal principles that are used in alchemy are the sulfur, the mercury, and the salt. The sulfur is that solar radiance quality. The mercury is like the moon, it's kind of cool. And the salt is the actual earth, the hard part. In an atom, you could relate it to the proton, the electron, the neutron. And the important one here for plant alchemy is that the sulfur in plant alchemy is the essential oil of the plant. The mercury of the plant is the spirit, which is alcohol. And so in some traditions, you actually make an alcohol out of the plant, but you can also use grape alcohol instead. So you have the essential oil, which is the sulfur, the spirit or the alcohol, which is the mercury, and the purified plant body, which is the salt. Is everybody following me so far? So those are the 3 elements of the plant that we're going to separate and combine, are the oil, the alcohol, and the body of the plant. And this is because they correspond to the sun, the moon, the earth, the sulfur, the mercury, and the salt. Now, I included this caduceus, this hermetic wand, so that you can also, again, remember that these three qualities also relate to the three energy channels. The soul corresponds to, and here I'm using the Sanskrit terms, the Pingala, which is the middle one, which is your spine, and then Ida and Shushuma correspond to the side ones. So I also put here, for those of you that are homeopaths and have any doubt that Hahnemann had ever looked at any of this, that you can obviously see that the remedy sulfur is the soric miasm. The remedy mercury is the syphilitic miasm, and salt, which is we use as nature muriaticum, is psychotic miasm. So you can almost see that it looked like his theory of miasms came right out of alchemy too, although he never ever admitted it. But you can see the correspondences very, very clearly. Any questions? Okay. So this slide is talking about those three principles and those three energy channels from the point of view of Ayurvedic and Tibetan medicine. This central channel, which you can see running up and down the body in this diagram from the tip of the head down to the genitals. The poison that afflicts this channel is the poison of delusion or ignorance, and the humor that's associated with it. Humor is like an old-fashioned word meaning body quality. I don't know a good definition of humor, but there are many systems of medicine have these different kinds of humors, which is like a quality, a body quality. So the humor associated with this central channel is phlegm and digestion. But when you refine this channel, the ignorance and the delusion become wisdom. So this is the purification and the healing process where the delusion and the ignorance become wisdom. The right channel, although in this diagram we have it backwards, and you'll see in different texts they sometimes say right is right, and sometimes they say left is right. But we'll just say the right channel from our point of view on this person is white and relates to the element fire. And the poison associated with this channel is hatred. It's considered the male side. The humor is called bile. And when it's purified, that hatred becomes clarity. So again, a purification process, transforming a poison into a wisdom or into a refined form of clarity. And then the left side, which is the red channel, the poison is desire. The humor is the wind, and people will often talk about moon in Tibetan medicine, of having this wind that rises and causes a lot of confusion and agitation and things like that. But when it's refined, it becomes discernment. So all of these, this is a foundation for using these sort of these three elements that are the same in alchemy and refining them inside your body in the same way. So this is really key, and I just want to review the three poisons again. Ignorance or delusion is the basic state that we first fall into, of just perceiving ourselves as separate from everything. And then once we've made that kind of delusional decision, then we react to things. We either don't like them and push them away, or we want them and get them near us, and we try to pull them. So it's a push-pull. Every time we look at something, we're either having a reaction like, that's something I don't like, you know, that's some dog poop on the ground, that's something I don't like, oh, and this is a piece of chocolate, that's something I like. So we're constantly making this thing and strengthening or I like this, I don't like that. So we get into this kind of thing, and the stronger and stronger that gets, the more we get into the world of obscuration. So the idea is to kind of purify all of that. Any questions?
Yes, I do. The right white, is that on the heart side, or is that on the liver side?
You know, it's in different systems, and some systems say it's reversed for male and female. So
okay.
the Tibetan doctor actually comes in and tells us their opinion, but this drawing is opposite from the information that I gave, obviously, unless you're looking at it from our point of view, in which case. So yeah, it's some systems say you reverse it for females. So I don't have a definitive answer to which side is red and which side is white.
Oh, I see.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll go back to alchemy now. So we talked about the three, the sulfur, mercury, and the salt, and how we're going to separate them and then recombine them after purifying them. We also, in alchemy, need to look at the elemental energy, which relate to the planets. And I'm not going to go into this now because it's too much information for such a short call, but just to keep in mind that we're also talking about planets and elements when we're doing this. So, as I mentioned before, in the plant world, mercury is alcohol, and you can either ferment a plant to get its alcohol out. I mean, you can literally take an herb and add some yeast to it and ferment it and make some kind of alcohol out of it. Or you can distill grape alcohol, because grape is considered to have the highest vibration of any plant. And so using grape alcohol is considered a way to help further refine the energies of the plant, and is also considered kind of like a universal alcohol. So we use astrology to determine when we are going to do the different processes, when we're going to, first pour the alcohol on the herbs, when we're going to separate them, when we're going to recombine them. So at the right astrological time, let's say we're going to do rose petals, so we're going to pick a time that's good for Venus. We're going to pour the grape alcohol over the rose petals and allow the tincture to mature. You can also use heat and vacuum to speed up the process, not a lot of heat, of just like I use a yogurt maker, just, 120 degrees or something like that on the bottom. And the sulfur, which are the essential oils, are dissolved into the alcohol. So that's where we have, so you can see how we have the alcohol, we have the three parts. We have the alcohol, we have the essential oils, which are dissolved into the alcohol, and we have the plant body. Having trouble getting this to advance, sorry. Oops, and it goes too far. So the alchemical process of separate and combine, which is solve et coagulate, awakens the intelligence of the plant. This is the potentization process in alchemy. These plants become friends who enjoy supporting our vital force. So it wakes them up like they've been asleep and kind of brings them into almost like a state of a higher state of being or a state of enlightenment. And say, oh, good, now I'm awake and I can do my work for you. Well-made spagyrics improve with time as they continue to evolve. So you can use spagyrics, continue to use them as long as they're well taken care of indefinitely. And it's also better not to dilute them with water. For those of you who've ever tried the spagyric remedies, you know that there's like this incredible rush when the 95% grape alcohol and the plant spirit, which carries the plant spirit, just immediately connects with your energy system. So diluting with water, water is actually a pollutant in the system because the alcohol, the spiritus, carries the spirit. And that's why the word spirit means alcohol, is because from alchemy, it's used to carry the spirit of the plant. And I also use toning and mantra as part of the process. That's not a tradition that I know of from Paracelsus, but it's something that I have added from my training in Vedic astrology. So the next thing to do once you've combined the plant, combined everything according to timings, is then to separate them. And the way that you separate them is you drain out the liquid and you're left with the plant body, let's say in this case the rose petals. So now the plant body needs to be refined, and refining is called calcination, which is burning it basically and getting rid of all of the carbon until all that you're left with is the crystals, the minerals. So the first thing you do is you set it on fire, which is easy to do because it's been soaking in 95% alcohol for a long time. And it, of course, reduces down to very, very little once you get that out. You grind it to a fine powder. And then you put it in an oven. At the time I was using, you have to do it outside. There's a lot of nasty smoke. I now have a dental oven that goes up to 1,500 degrees and really, really does a good job. Another alchemist told me how you can get these on eBay. So I got one on eBay. It's this little dental oven from the 1940s. It's just tiny like that, but it does go up to 1,500 degrees. So after I've done my preliminary burning, I now put it in this dental oven at 1,500 degrees. And then you really do get the salt coming out. And then you recombine the three. You can see this is an alchemical drawing representing the body, spirit, and soul of the plant. And so you combine them at another good astrological time. So that's where it's a separation and a recombining. And then once they've been recombined, I put it in a special vessel called a pelican vessel. And you can see that it has two orbs, one on the bottom, one on the top, with this sort of birth canal in between. And then it also has these arms. And I have it sitting in a yogurt maker so that it's warm in the bottom. So it's in this constant state of movement, of the alcohol turning into a gas, going up through this kind of round apparatus, then dropping back down, and then coming up. So it's doing what's called a circulation. It's a constant circulation. So circulating after recombining is the final step that really, really, really potentizes. And Isabel, you had told me some interesting information recently about water and how it makes a difference, like if you're going to drink some water, to put the curve back in it after it's been in the straight pipe by rotating it. You want to say something about that?
Yeah, it's about the vitality of water gets lost in the system that we have to procure water to everybody with the pipes, is that the water in the pipe is forced to go straight, whereas water in the natural environment will constantly curve and eddy and pool. And in doing that, it's ionized and it has a lot of free ions, and so it's very vital. Whereas when it gets stuck in pipes, it loses its vitality and it becomes a dead, it becomes a dead in water. And so when we get water off our faucets by twirling it in both directions, it allows the water to regain some of its vitality and some of its life.
Great. Okay, thank you. Yeah, so this is a similar kind of principle. We're basically vitalizing the spagyric even more by having it go through this continual reincarnation process. And you can see that the shape of the vessel is like a womb, and there's like a birth canal. And it goes up, and then it goes through the birth canal, goes up, it expands, and then it comes back down. So, and you can add, I actually add vacuum, which is, there's like a vacuum sealer on the top there, which makes that even more active. And also, as I said, the yogurt maker at the bottom. This particular one here, I was making tulsi, which is holy basil, and I have tulsi beads hanging on there. That's why there's like beads on the vessel. That's not always there. I might put different things on depending on what I'm making. So let's talk about rose. Yeah, I'm just going to go over a few spagyrics to give you an idea of how the planetary energies relate to the spagyrics. So rose, of course, is associated with the planet Venus. This elixir opens up and warms the heart and increases sensuality, passion, and feminine qualities such as bliss and devotion, and can be very healing for emotional trauma. So this is a very sublime one that most people can feel right away because it's a very familiar smell, a familiar taste, and people really, can relate to it very quickly, usually. Lemon balm was another favorite of Paracelsus's, which is also known as Melissa. Melissa officinalis is its name, and I grew a bunch of lemon balm in my garden. It grows really well here, and made it from my own homegrown lemon balm when I made this spagyric. And like a balm, it comforts the heart and drives away sadness. This is what it says in the traditional Materia Medicas about it. Along with all troublesome thoughts and cares, it helps to heal a disordered state of the nervous system caused by anxiety and stress. So it's very soothing, very comforting, very, very nice herb, and people seem to like it a lot. Melissa relates to the planet Jupiter. Jupiter has these qualities of expansion, well-being, inner wisdom. So that is another spagyric that you will get to sample in the course. Boswellia is made from Indian frankincense. It's a resin, and it's very, very strong because resins dissolve really, really well in alcohol. So it's almost like this liquid gold stuff. It's kind of amazing. And of course, frankincense is used in ceremony and has been both East and West since ancient time. But it also is used as an Ayurvedic preparation to open the mind and clear the subtle channels of the body, as we were looking at earlier. So people who do yoga, Tai Chi, or healing energy systems. Of course, these days people are really interested in Boswellia because it's affinity for the joints. And you'll see it a lot in the health food stores these days, people taking Boswellia for joint pain. This elixir is made in tune with the energy of the sun. You can see the beautiful golden color. If you see the elixir, it's a bright, bright gold and gives that kind of, the way the sun's rays purify everything. Boswellia has that same kind of quality of clarifying and purifying. But it's very, very bitter. It's got a surprising bitter taste to it, but you can also taste, the frankincense, the kind of perfumey, beautiful taste, but it's also quite bitter. And lotus is related to the moon, and sacred lotus is also used as a medicinal plant for getting a sense of peace and serenity and purity, just as the moon has a very peaceful, serene, and pure and cool and radiant kind of energy. This is the energy of lotus. And just like a lotus can come out of the mud, we can also achieve that kind of clarity and rise out of confusion and go into a state of serenity from the lotus. So this is a moon herb. And it also has this kind of nurturing quality of the moon as well, like milk. Any questions? I think, let's see. Yeah, so I think this.
Hi, Willa.
Yeah, hi.
This is Owen. I have a question just about, you know, I guess I'm coming about from a more hard scientific upbringing. But when like an herb claims it will open your third eye or help you remember dreams or something like that, how much do you trust that and just take it on faith? Or I guess people in the past used to experience this directly, but these days, you know, with research and so forth.
Well, as you know, as an alchemist, and that's what we do, is we have our own experiences. So, you know, I work with the plants as I'm making them. I take them, I meditate on them, I do my own process with them. And sometimes it's a little different than what other people, because sometimes the qualities that I'm bringing out in the plant, due to who I am, are a little bit different than what other alchemists may bring out. A good example of this is Tulsi. Other alchemists associate Tulsi very much with Mercury and mental clarity and things like that. But for me, it was a very, very, very blissful herb, and it was really connected with Venus. So, yeah, I don't rely on people telling me it's for this or for that. And really the whole point of this course is to make your own connections with the plant world and work with plants and have your own experiences rather than relying on somebody telling you what it's for or what it should do. So that would be my, you know, my intention for people in this course would be to have, it would be when you get to that part of the course and, you know, to graduate, you will have to make a spagyric yourself. And everybody who did it in my previous course had a really, really great experience doing it. So, and people often took very simple substances like ginger, just something that they like, you know, it could be garlic, could be ginger, it could be something that simple, or it could be, you know, an herb that you're really interested in. And you can read about it and taste it and try it as a tea and look at the planetary affiliations if that's been discovered yet, or try to figure it out yourself based on, you know, all of these correspondences. You know, for example, pepper and garlic and onions are associated with Mars because they've got that really fiery energy. So, you know, a lot of these things you can figure out yourself when you understand the different correspondences of taste and things like that. Does that answer your question?
Yes, that's great. Thank you.
Okay. So, yeah, I'd like to invite all of you to join the course. If you're interested, fill out an application, which is at vitalism.us. I already have a Yahoo group with about 30 people on it from the last time that I taught this course. And when people enroll, I'm intending to invite you right there and start having discussions and readings, even though the actual class, the first meeting of the class will be the third Sunday in January. And then there'll be another one on the third Sunday in February. And then in March, we'll be meeting on the Saturday and Sunday, because that's when Tugul Urgen Punsof will be there. So he'll be there in March and September. In September, he's going to be doing the Bardo teachings, which are the teachings about life-death transition, but also what we experience in the death state between death and rebirth, the experiences that the consciousness goes through during that time, which is very, very valuable information. Maybe the most valuable thing because, you know, finessing or being able to deal with our own death and our next life is very important in terms of, you know, where we end up and what we're doing next. So, yeah, the Bardo teachings are an absolutely brilliant offering from the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, which many hospice workers and chaplains of all kinds study this kind of thing, because really in other traditions there's just not this kind of detail and this kind of knowledge. So I think it's very special. So yeah, I'm hoping you can join us. I'm also offering some early bird tuition discounts for people who are enrolling. So if you're really sure you want to do this and you are enrolling by November 1st, then we will have some tuition, some early bird tuition, because I'd like to sort of get a group gelling already before we actually even start, because I'm excited and enthusiastic, and if you are too, it would be great to get started on some learning. As I said, you know, we'll get started even just on the Yahoo group discussing things, and I'll be posting articles and links and things like that. Any other questions?
Willa, I have a question. This is Lynn.
Oh, hi, Lynn.
Hi. I was wondering, is it fairly easy to collect the equipment that you need for making this federic?
That's a very good question. Well, I will provide the alcohol for you, which is the one thing that's very hard. The other things, you can really do it with mason jars. You don't have to do it with, you know, my fancy stuff. For people who are local, you could probably use my oven. For other people, they're going to just have to use whatever oven they can use. And, you know, I used the toaster oven for many years until I got this dental oven. So, yeah, the most difficult thing, which is the grape alcohol, I'll be providing a bottle of to everybody. And everything else you can just basically do out of your kitchen.
What is grape alcohol?
It's taking organic wine, this is organic grape alcohol, and distilling it, putting it through a still so that you end up with just the alcohol. And in the past, I used to do this myself. I had the equipment and I would do this, and traditionally an alchemist would distill it 7 times. Basically, you put some heat underneath the alcohol and it turns to a gas and it goes over a cistern and then it condenses and goes down and drips into something else. And traditionally you would do that 7 times to get it really, really pure. And you'd end up with this crystal clear alcohol from grapes, from wine. But it starts off as wine.
I see. Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Are there any other questions? Okay. Let me see if I can return here. Well, thank you so much for joining me, and let me know. You're welcome to email me or contact me if you have any questions. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Willa.
You're welcome. Bye. Bye. Good night.
Thank you, Willa.
You're welcome. Bye.